Angomcha Bimol Akoijam perhaps needs no introduction. He's a professor at the prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru University of India and recently took the plunge as Congress candidate for Lok Sabha from the Inner Manipur constituency, Northeast India. Tonight, I'm trying to aim for a lighter conversation with Professor Bimol. I know you've had your fill of serious talks by now. Firstly, tell me what a day is like in your life right now. How has it changed since you took the political plunge?
Actually, right now I am in Delhi trying to wind up the semester teaching. I was on leave for my election campaign. So I'm back in Delhi in my campus. I'm doing things which I love to do, which I've been doing for almost 30 years now. Being with my students, a little hectic because this is the last week of teaching and we're trying to round up the semester teaching and assignments and so on. Besides taking care of three of my PhD students who are submitting at the end of the month as well. So it's pretty hectic. I feel like a teacher after a gap of 1.5 months or so.
How do you perceive the public's current view of you? Do you think the people view you as a savior of the Meiteis or an adversary of the cookies or perhaps a friend to both the communities? And also, do these varying opinions hold significance to you?
Not really. I have come to know in my life, and I've been saying this, that there is a lovely song which is instructive and is therapeutic in some sense. There's a song by Kishore Kumar called "Kuch to log kahenge logon ka kaam hai kehna," and besides that, I come from my parent discipline was psychology, so I've learned a few tips from my own disciplines to carry on with my life. So my primary concern is my inner processes, my convictions, my understanding of life, and what I ought to do, what is right, what is wrong. So in that sense, it doesn't bother me much, though I keep listening to what others say because that's also important since we're a social being. But it doesn't unsettle me as such. So whichever means they think about it, I'm very clear about why I joined electoral politics, what I ought to do. And as far as different responses from cookies and Meiteis are concerned, I think true to my star sign, I am a Gemini, so even people's response to me seems to be splitted. Some might think that, I can be good for both the communities. Some people think that I am a Meitei fanatics or Meitei chauvinist. They would call it, some people say, oh, he is a different Meitei. He would be doing things good for us. Among the Meiteis also, I begin to sense that some even Meiteis feel threatened because I take certain positions, particularly in the present regime and the way they have handled the issue. I have a lot of issues with the way they have handled it. So many of voters of these people from my own communities, I saw that many of their which I consider as unfounded allegations, but trying to trouble me. There are little ways that they could do it. But as I said, that I take care of these things, try to understand from where their appreciation or criticism, both ways, are coming from. Why they do appreciate me, why do they criticize me, both ways. I look at that, take care of them. But I know whatever corrective measures I have to do it, I'll take care of that and continue to do what I have to do.
A phrase that you often use, of course, when associated with intellectuals like yourself, is the notion of speaking truth to the power. Now that you've joined politics, how do you think you'll manage the conflict between standing up for truth and the practicalities of being involved in politics?
See, politics is a normative reality. One aspect of politics is we tend to think that politics is all about power game, of instrumentality. We tend to understand politics in a very instrumental way. But I think we should not forget that politics has a normative aspects to it. What we ought to do and what ought to be done and so on. So I think that aspect of politics. I think I will be standing up for that one. Of course, you have to negotiate with the various dimensions of being in public domain and various interests at work. One has to be careful of them. But I think my habit as an intellectual or a member of the intellectual class who are in the habit of speaking truth to the power, I think that same thing goes for politicians. I believe that if you are in public domain and as a political leader, then you should be courageous. At the same time, you should have a conviction about certain issues in your life. Require both. In that sense, I don't expect too many changes to come in the way I function normally. But yes, I do accept that there could be certain compulsion as a member of a political party or being a politician, so to speak. But I will try. I'll have to negotiate with those compulsions in such a way that I don't lose myself. The very purpose of me coming to the realm of the political, I shouldn't lose that purpose. If I lose that purpose, there is no point in staying in this domain. I can very well withdraw myself, but withdrawal is not an option. You need to fight it out because you have joined in order to shape the collective destiny of the people, the way people live their life. So you are trying to do your little efforts here. So in that sense, one must stand up for one's own principles and one's own ideals. Without forgetting, without dismissing the practicality of the negotiation that one has to do it. But I think you negotiate precisely because you have certain ideas in your mind. I think that should not be forgotten.
Professor Bimol, what do we know about what's happening in Manipur right now? For the Australian audience and members of the diaspora, they have a very limited understanding of the Manipur crisis. So could you sort of provide a comprehensive description of the underlying causes and dynamics of the conflict? And also, how does the Manipur conflict seem different from other conflicts in India?
One of the first things that we must remember is that that's my gut feeling at the beginning of the crisis itself. The first thing that we must understand is that it is multi-layered phenomenon with multiple players involved. And one of the critical player in this whole saga is the Indian state. It is implicated and is complicit in this crisis through its inactions. We can see that one. A country, a settled democracy, with functioning institutions, and the fourth most powerful military in the world, to say that it's unable to control the violence is a myth. It's not inability. It is the unwillingness to act and for a purpose. I'm certain that there must be a certain political game behind or considerations why this violence has been allowed to go on for a year, more than a year now. So this is the issue. On the face of it, it is reflected in a conflict between two communities. But we must not forget that I believe that this violence is orchestrated at multiple layers with multiple players involved. And the most important player is the Indian state, which is quite obviously complicit in this phenomenon through its inaction. That's inescapable fact of this issue. But like any other multicultural society, we do have our internal tensions and estrangements, which is both historical and recent. Some aspects are recent in nature, and it is expected that you will have this conflict and contestations in our state. But those contestation and estrangement do not necessarily reflect in the kind of violence that we have seen. That's why I think we need to distinguish, even though as we accept that, multicultural societies is bound to have certain elements of conflict and contestation, but it doesn't necessarily takes this form that it has taken. And this is orchestrated. Definitely this is orchestrated by vested interests. And we have experiences throughout the post-colonial period as well. But none of those have been allowed to take the form of a civil war where the civilians were armed with sophisticated weapons. It was almost like the former Yugoslavian crisis, or what had happened in Rwanda between the Hutus and the Tutsis, for example. And the key players are not these communities alone, though. That's the only difference here. There are multiple players. I think that's the way the violence has been.
So, when do you perceive, a semblance of peace would come to Manipur, and what does a lasting peace between Meiteis and Kukis look like?
The first thing is that, as I said, we have historical baggages in Manipur. The relationship between communities, the discourses and policies have its roots in colonial ideas and practices. Many of those things have been sort of strengthened by the post-colonial Indian state. Ironically, there are unnatural, irrational ideas and practices which we have followed. Take, for instance, that Manipur is part of the mountainous regions. If you look at geography or geological theory, the state of Manipur is part of the Himalayan fold, which came out of the collision between the Indian plate and the Eurasia plate, and how the Himalayas were formed. So Manipur is a mountainous part, is part of the mountainous Himalayan region. And yet we have a distinction between valley and what they call valley and the hills, as if it is the same distinction as you can maintain between the Nainital and the plains of Lucknow and so on. Indo-Gangetic plain and the Shivalik region like Uttarakhand areas and so on. One is a plain area, one is a mountainous region. In Manipur, we apply a similar kind of a categories where the fact of the matter is, like the Shivalik region of the Himalayas, the Uttarakhand, 800 meters above sea level kind of a thing. Imphal is 800 plus meter above sea level. But you look at it as if it's like the plain of Banaras or Lucknow, and its hill areas, which is barely 100 meters. The difference would be barely 100 meters to maximum. It would be something like 800 meters difference between Imphal and many of the so-called hill areas. Is a part of the same mountainous region. So these are some of the categories where we have falsely created. And what happened is that even if the slopes of the hill people, they do marketing in the town there on the valley. They go for education in the same valley. They go for medical treatment in the same valley. And yet that portion will go kilometers and miles away and become part of what they call it hill district. Many of such irrational categories and ideas have been in place in our state. This is century old. It started by the British, and ironically, the post-colonial Indian state did not correct it. It strengthened those things. So there are a lot of divisions. And because of these divisions, we have our own worldview based on this. So we have internalized these aspects. We started looking at each other with suspicions and unnecessary and negative competition rather than looking for common grounds for development. So long-term peace in the state would require a re-engagement with these things, unpacking this category, deconstructing these categories at one level. But at the same time, we must also realize as a multicultural society, we must take care of the aspiration and apprehensions that each of these communities have. A lasting peace can come only when you address these apprehensions and aspiration as well. And a lot of sense of injustices are felt by many communities that need to be addressed. And when we think about justice and injustice, let's not forget that Meiteis as a community do have historical grievances and a sense of injustice being meted out to them. And these must also be addressed as we address the sense of injustice that the other communities in this state experience. I think that for a lasting peace, these are required. But immediately the ground condition must be created by the Indian state by reining in this violence, to stop this violence first, and enforce its writ so that the national highways are clear and people feel safe, both in terms of their life and property, that the state, that's an obligation, constitutional obligation that the Indian state has. That must come into play to begin with, and the rest will follow.
You were there on the ground for the past 1.5 months, and of course, you have been consistently visiting the state. How does the average citizen of Manipur maintain hope in these really trying times?
Actually, people don't have hope. There are so much hatred among each other, so much anger and frustrations. But I can sense that vast majority of the people know that the state has failed, that whoever is governing the state or the Indian state, when I use, some people get confused. When I say state, they tend to think about Manipur. I'm using it as a political category, the state, as it is defined in Indian Constitution's Article 12. So it implicates both the government of India as well as the state government. I think they have failed to perform their constitutional duties and obligations. The primary thing would be quite obviously to protect the life and property of citizens, which they have not been able to do it. The violence has been privatized. It is in the hands of civilians and non-state entities. In that sense, I don't see much hope there among the people. They rather, what I encounter is a sense of frustration, anger, and mistrust. And that's, to be very honest, we don't need sugar-coated word. That's a harsh reality that people have. And I think in order to correct this, some of us must fix, this responsibility on the state first. That is the primary responsibility of the government to protect the life and property. The institutions have been allowed to be sort of jeopardized. Police is collapses in institutions. People don't trust. Manipur police in the Churachampur has been accused of siding with the Kukis, and those in the Central Valley are accused of siding with the Meiteis. So as a state institution, it has collapsed. And similarly, unfortunately, even the Indian armed forces, including the army, a certain section of the populations don't have trust in them now. So I think the officers and officials who are handling this institution must be worried about this thing. They should try to do something about this perception among the people and ensure that the people have trust in these institutions. If you don't recover these institutions, there's no way that we can think about peace. The state must assert its authority. When I said that, it entails that these institutions like police and armed forces function, and they command certain amount of trust from the population in the state. That has not been there. But so I think my only hope is that once we see a correct vision of the problem, people will know where to go and how to go about things. Right now, there have been a lot of confusions where, some people say it's a conflict between two communities. Some say, no, there's an external element. Some say it's a narco-terrorist. Some say it is separate and some independent country. Some say it is waging war against India. All kinds of things have been talked, including by the people who are running the government. I think this must be confronted by right-thinking individual. And then once people see it, then you will begin to sense a hope and a sense of where to go and how to go about to restore normalcy in the state.
So can we say, correct me if I'm wrong, so can we say that, what we're seeing in Manipur is this global emergence of, the right-wing populism, So if yes, then were these ideologies always present, awaiting an opportunity for expression, or did shifts in material circumstances pave the way for their political ascent? So how do you consider this phenomenon within the context of India and Manipur?
That's true. There has been a geopolitical dimension of the global order. in the present crisis. But you should also know there has been churning within the country of this thing. Look at this, that party like BJP has been supported by many of these Sioux groups. And it is openly said that, this alignment, this alliance between these groups, which is there in public domain, in newspapers and others you can see, is in order to serve their political goal. So I suspect that, this is one aspect of the whole issue. Is there a deliberate attempt to encourage some people to achieve certain political demand? Similarly, there is a geopolitical dimensions to the whole crisis, the crisis has been sort of looked at as a part of India's response to a global issue, particularly in the neighboring country called Myanmar. So they are not looking at it as a conflict within Manipur only. So India is responding to that, that's my suspicion, as a part of their overall response to what's happening in Myanmar in particular, and larger reconfigurations caused by the emergence of China as a power. I think they are handling in that kind of a dimension. That's why we have these issues far more complicated than a mere conflict between two communities.
Professor Bimol, you and your team had taken out a study on the biased Indian mainstream media narrative of the Manipur crisis. What were some of your key findings?
That been right from the day one. By the way, this report is only accessible to a few people. We have not, made it available on a mass scale. There is many other issues involved. Why we have not allowed this report to be accessible to a mass level. But that time has come now, and people will see. And as I talk to you in a couple of hours, from now onwards, it should be available online now. The key findings are simple. That this Indian media, very, very strangely, something that I have never expected a mature media of a country like India would behave in that fashion. They have been, quite obviously very biased and one-sided way of reportage is one, and factually incorrect things have been passed off as facts and accurate information. Very misleading and inciting the crisis, aggravating the crisis. That's the overall finding we have. The specific, you will be shocked how certain disinformation campaign was allowed as opinion pieces. According to Press Council of India, when you write opinion pieces, you are supposed to base it on staff-less facts, and many of the opinions were rest upon hearsays and factually incorrect things which have been said. Take, for example, they said wetlands have been declared in the Kuki-Zo area. And to the best of our research team, our knowledge, under Rule 2017 rules, none of the water bodies in the state is declared a wetland. So how can you, including the Loktak Lake, it's not been declared as wetland. So how did you say that Kuki-Zo area wetlands have been declared? And similarly, impression has been given as if it is a Kuki-specific target or even tribal-specific target that forests have been declared as protected or reserved by the present government there too. There's an insinuation, but the fact is that much of the forests which have been declared protected and reserved are across the state. It's not specifically to some area as they claim it. And much of these things, except for one or two, one is in 1979, the other is in 1990. Except for these two, rest of the reserve and protected forests have been declared during the colonial period and when Manipur was a union territory under Delhi. So there is nothing about Maitai scheming to declare and usurp these land as forests. This is what they've been preaching, which is factually incorrect. And there are also very interesting thing. Maximum sources they have quoted is from one side. There is Kuki sources have been predominantly and statistically significant. We have done statistical analysis. Significant sources have been quoted on Kuki side. So if you say, for example, a violence happened in X, an incident X event, they will cite cookie sources, not the Meitei sources. So that stories have been reported from a particular vantage point. All these things are against the Press Council of India's standard or the norms set out by this for ethical journalism. They don't follow this. All these things will be available, and I'm just hoping that the Indian media takes the necessary corrective steps. And rest of the world should also know what has been facts and what has been part of the disinformation campaign. And through that report, you will be able to sense it.
Are you excited or nervous about June 4th when the election results come out?
I am not. It's immaterial. I have been doing things for my home state. I feel it very close to my heart. So irrespective of the election results, I will be doing what I have been doing before. And I could sense there is an impulse somewhere, there's a wave among the people. They want peace. They want a new Manipur. I think this energy we have to utilize. I'm already on that project with many of our friends. We will be making a change with this energy that people have shown during the election. Tells you very clearly that people are longing for peace and a new Manipur, and that we will be pursuing irrespective of the election result. If the result is positive in our favor, which I think we have a fair chance, despite the massive ragging, unprecedented ragging and violence. Remember that except for us, me and my party members and India Bloc, or some of those people who supported us, none opened their mouth against the violence, including many of the diaspora communities were silent because it hurts the regime that they are supporting. But they must know that violence is violence, unacceptable. And I'm struck by the fact that nobody opens their mouth condemning such kind of a violence, trying to scuttle people's democratic right. But despite those ragging and violence, I am still hopeful that we have a fair chance of winning the election. As I said, irrespective of the result, though, we will be working for a new Manipur to improve things, the conditions, and I have also set out 13 agendas. So we will be doing those bit.
We all saw you sing on Tamal's interview, but given that a lot of your fans were disappointed that you joined the Congress, how do you manage the heartbreak of fans who would rather see you as leading a rock band than a political party?
Indira, I'll tell you, I also take time for me to realize that I'm a member of the Congress party. In many of my conversation, I used to refer to as, in Meitei Lon, I say, Moigi Congress. And one reminded me that, why are you calling Moigi Congress? You are part of the Congress party and so on. I joined Congress party. I've explained this many times.
Yeah, I know.
Those people who know hard practical politics will know that you need a political party to support yourself, and you must align ideologically and programmatically with an organization. Just think about it. Winning as an election as an independent, sitting in parliament, and then sitting as a member of a group on party members, you are already trying to influence within the party a particular thought process. So there's practical politics besides the organizational support. When I sit down with my own party colleagues, if I win the election, just think about me as part of a team. And what they think about Manipur, it is within the party, I'll be able to share what is facts and figures about Manipur within that party. So you can very well imagine not a lone voice, but a group of MPs speaking in a similar line. Mm-hmm. And that is why you require in the national politics that level of it. To influence the thinking of a major political party in this country itself is a huge challenge. Forget about influencing the entire parliament. Your job begins from the smaller spheres within your party, within the MPs of your own parties, trying to convince and clarify things for them because you come from that part of the world. So these are many considerations when we do it. And as I said in many of my interviews, regionalism is a fantasy and idea in Manipur. people will always use that as a platform to go to somewhere. We have seen it. It's far better to see whether you can carry this interest of your reason called the state. Whichever party, you are in BJP, carry that interest. You are in Congress, carry that interest. You are in parliament, carry that interest. You are in assembly, carry that interest. You are in an academic institutions, carry that interest. This is every sphere. That's what the true regionalism is, not a mask that you put up in order to join politics, then you abandon it. You have seen in Manipur, right? There are so many regional parties, then suddenly they join on certain parties and something like that. Yeah. Some candidates even said that he will not be member of the opposition. He will always join the ruling parties. Then look at that in Manipur. That's why we don't have principle-less. We have this principle-less, ideological-less politics. All these people will join BJP. Remember, JDU, this party, that party becomes meaningless. Whoever gets the power, they jump into that bandwagon. And so you need to do what is far more important is practical, ideological, and then programmatic kind of a politics rather than some fantasies and ideas. But I think that regional, as I said, is there in Congress as well, in the sense that when Rahul Gandhi says India is a union of states, I'm very clear that there can be no India without the states. So the interests of the Manipur state must be accommodated, and I feel that Congress has that aspect to accommodate that state's interests rather than a hegemonic, homogenizing one nation kind of program where the state is being used like a tool of the union government, like a puppet. You use that. It's unacceptable. Even within the Congress, if anybody dares to treat the state as puppets, then I would not be the only one who will stand up against that kind of a politics.
We've had a very serious talk, so let's get to a fun segment. I want to ask you, what has been the weirdest piece of legislation you've heard proposed?
I haven't heard much of those things, which I've funny things. But I heard, this will be serious. This is not going to be lighter. And some of the justifications that the parliamentarians talked of, is very funny, and I turned it into a joke in my class. For example, when some people say marital rape cannot be a criminal act under Indian law because Indian traditions and families will break up, and I say, wow, that means we have family institutions on the exploitation of women. And my students will laugh at it. I said, at the end of the day, that kind of answer makes me feel, very funny about some of the rationales given by parliamentarians. But I haven't heard funny legislation as such at the moment. Often I can think of it.
Okay. I'm going to ask you of singing a bit towards the end, but I'm going to ask you this. So what was some of the funniest moments you had during your election campaign? We've seen all of things going viral, all of that, but I want to know about some funny moments that you experienced.
Funny moments. I was so tense and I don't know which would be the funny moments. I was pretty tense and very angry, on the election day. I have sweet moments, not funny moments as such,
Yeah.
People campaigning for me without my knowledge, It is partly funny at that level, I was told that my brother, some people started campaigning for me, for canvassing for me to my brother without realizing that, he is my brother. So that kind of thing makes me feel, funny. One of the sweet moments I find is that, you look very young. You look far more handsome than on television. That kind of a comment I have heard from many people when I go on campaign. Those are the sweet, slightly funnier moments. I mean, it's just a compliment as I'm competing against two film stars. So I think that's a compliment. And some people say that I look handsome.
Okay. Okay. I know you have a passion for singing, and you please tell us about it, because I think you've spoken something about bringing.
I was trained when I was in school. I was studying music in government music college in Manipur, I learned, and then singing. And my mother says that I am in the wrong profession. I should have been a singer, is what my mother used to say. Um, then I was trained in Hindustani music. So I normally sing modern Manipuri song and Hindi film songs. Then later in life, around my class 12, I picked up Western songs as well. So I have, I love Scorpion and Def Leppard and stuff like that. Eric Clapton, I still sing once a while in party. I sing Eric Clapton. Singing and cinema is something that is very close to my heart. If God willing, if I were in position, if I had producers, I would have left my job long time, but I would rather do research work and make films. It's something that I'm very passionate about. And singing, as I get older, I realize that my voice might not be the same. So I'm trying to record some original numbers. In fact, we have done that work before this whole election thing came into the scene. We have already done our preparation. So I'll be recording those songs now.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it will be very awkward, if I win the election and still singing. But I sing, one Bengali guy, Babul Supriyo or something, he also sings.
Okay. Why not?
I'm sure that there must be MPs across the globe who also sings well.
Yep. And I think you shouldn't give this up because, it's therapeutic to sing. And you'll be living such a stressful life as a politician. So,
yeah, I know. I mean, you're so right. You're so right.
Do you like wearing the dhoti and the kurta as the typical neta dress outfit?
No, I don't like. I don't wear. That was one of the conditions, and the party asked me to take a picture with my folded hand like this. I said nothing doing. I said I will never do it. I will not wear kurta and that waistcoat politician style. Let me wear the clothes that I'm comfortable with, and let me be what I am. But people started sending messages, why you're wearing that jacket when you're doing prayer? And then some people did so many things. You don't do that. Sanamahi ka temple mein, why you're wearing? If you go to Govindaji temple, you will not wear this. And I went with the same thing when I went to Govindaji temple as well. I just wanted to be myself. But, as people said, no, you should not be wearing that. There are all kinds of things that happened during this campaign. But I think I won. I refused to take a snap like this. The party asked me to, for election poster. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I am what I am, and I want to be like this. That's the way I go.
Yeah.
That very interesting thing I learned, I have a habit of putting my hands in the jacket when I speak. And some of the senior politicians drag my hand like this while I was speaking. Subconsciously, I started putting my hand inside the jacket and speak. There are a lot of things that I have improved. And first few times, I didn't do like this to people. I just walk in and say hi, hello. Later on, they said, no, you should be doing like this. Then I realized, after a week or so, just as I get down from my vehicle, the first thing I do is like this.
Yeah. I saw you there.
Funny
I saw that
at
later.
the beginning.
Yeah. This is
That's a very funny experience. By the way, that's the funny part. And I did like this, funny on the stage also. I started doing like the way in cinema people do like this, you raise hand like this.
Let's hear a song from you before we end.
Yeah, it's, there is a old track in my first film, Langoi Challabi, which is on, again, fractured nature of Manipur. It's a documentary film. I started with documentary. It was later on I made feature film, fictions, and so on. So all my films also deal with political issues, by the way, including my feature films and fictions. It's something to do with Manipur situations. Incidentally, my film must be the first, according to their one film critic. He wrote in his book that the first film where a tribal becomes a hero and the real tribal plays the protagonist rather than a Meitei mimicking as a tribal. So in my first film, I have this a scene where, the 2001, the June uprising, when there was a image in slow motion. I use it where, the doctor was trying to revive the patient by doing this, pressing on the chest like this. So that's a slow motion. And there was a song track. I sung that part. It's a
Oh,
very famous patriotic song. It's
yeah.
not mine, and I
Yeah.
render it with a little bit of emotion,
Oh, wow.
in tune, in sync with the image of that dead person in the hospital. That I can hum that part
Yeah,
briefly.
please sing.
Oh, Iman, pugna Iman, nangumbi leite Iman, koina thiduna lavna chatuna nangumbi pangloi ma, like that.
Oh my God, that was
So
beautiful.
I did do that. I have my own original numbers also, so you'll get to hear it later on. So you
Yeah.
can see that I'm recording some of these things in a few months, and probably before the result or just after the result, I'll be recording my songs, which was planned long time back.
Thank you, Professor Bimal. Thank you so much for your time with the Indian Sun, and I wish you all the best for June 4th.
Thank you.